Have you ever noticed something so wrong, so fundamentally out of place that your brain refuses to accept it? What would you do if you were alone, miles from anyone, and something impossible was happening right in front of you? Would you investigate, or would you run? And what if running wasn't an option? The fluorescent lights of the stop-and-go flickered with their usual irregular rhythm as I restocked the cigarette display behind the counter. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in March, and I'd seen exactly 3 customers in the past 4 hours. That was normal for this stretch of Route 89, 15 miles outside of Prescott, Arizona. The highway cut through empty desert, connecting nowhere to nowhere, and our little gas station sat like a lit fishbowl in an ocean of darkness. My name is Marcus Webb, and I'd been working the graveyard shift at this place for 8 months. The pay was terrible, the hours worse, but I needed the money. Student loans don't care that you dropped out of ASU halfway through your junior year. They don't care that your mom got sick and someone had to come home to help with bills. They just keep demanding payment, month after month, with interest that never stops growing. So there I was, 23 years old, standing behind a scratched plexiglass barrier in a gas station that probably hadn't been renovated since the 80s, watching the night crawl by. The AM radio played classic rock at low volume, and the coffee maker gurgled as it brewed its 100th pot of the day. The smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner had become so familiar I barely noticed it anymore. I was alone as usual. Jerry, the owner, was too cheap to staff 2 people on the night shift. He'd installed security cameras instead, 6 of them covering every angle of the property, all feeding to a monitor behind the counter and recording to a hard drive in the back office. He checked the footage religiously, making sure I wasn't giving away free coffee or letting friends pump gas without paying. I'd learned to be careful, to follow every procedure exactly as written in his 3-ring binder of rules. At 11:52 p.m., I heard the sound of tires on gravel. I looked up from my phone where I'd been scrolling through social media, desperate for any connection to the outside world. Through the large windows, I saw headlights sweep across the gas pumps as a car pulled into the lot. It was a sedan, dark-colored, maybe blue or black, hard to tell under the sodium vapor lights. The make and model weren't distinctive, something generic and common. A Toyota Camry or Honda Accord, the kind of car you see 100 times a day and never remember. It pulled up to pump number 3, the one farthest from the building, and stopped. I waited for the driver to get out. That's the routine. They pull up, get out, swipe a card, or come inside to prepay. But nobody emerged. The car just sat there, engine running, headlights pointing toward the empty desert beyond the property line. After a minute, I figured they were looking for their wallet or credit card. It happens. People sit in their cars, digging through purses or glove compartments, getting increasingly frustrated as they search. I went back to my phone. 5 minutes passed. The car hadn't moved. Nobody had gotten out. I looked up at the security monitor mounted above the counter. 6 camera feeds showed different angles of the property. I found pump 3 on camera 2. The car sat there, perfectly still, exhaust vapor visible in the cool desert air. But from this angle, I couldn't see clearly through the windows. The glare from the lights and the tint on the glass made it impossible to see if anyone was inside. I felt a small knot of unease form in my stomach. In 8 months of working here, I'd developed instincts about situations that might turn bad. Drunk drivers who wobbled when they walked, tweakers who couldn't stand still and whose eyes darted everywhere at once. Groups of teenagers who whispered and laughed too much, working up courage to try stealing beer. This didn't fit any of those patterns, but something felt off. At midnight, the car was still there. 20 minutes of sitting with the engine running at a gas pump without getting out. I picked up my phone and pulled up the group chat with my 2 roommates back in Prescott. "Weird shit at work," I typed. "Car just sitting at the pump for 20 minutes. Nobody getting out." Tyler responded almost immediately. He worked security at a resort and was probably as bored as I was. Maybe they fell asleep. Engine still running, I replied. Go knock on the window. I looked out at the car, sitting in its pool of light surrounded by desert darkness. The nearest building was 6 miles away. The nearest house, maybe 10. If I walked out there and something went wrong, I was on my own. Yeah, maybe, I typed, but didn't move. Another 5 minutes crawled by. The car remained motionless. I tried to focus on other tasks, wiping down the counter, restocking the candy display, but my eyes kept returning to that car. At 12:17 a.m., I decided I needed to do something. Jerry's rules were clear about cars blocking the pumps. If someone was sleeping, I needed to wake them and ask them to move. If they were having a medical emergency, I needed to call 911. Standing behind the counter accomplishing nothing wasn't an option. I grabbed the heavy Maglite flashlight we kept under the register. The one Jerry insisted was for security purposes. In 8 months, I'd never needed it for anything except checking the bathroom when the light burned out. I unlocked the front door and stepped out into the night. The temperature had dropped into the low 50s, cold enough that I wished I'd grabbed my jacket. The wind carried the smell of creosote and dust, that distinctive desert scent that I'd grown up with. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere in the distance I heard a coyote yip. I walked toward Pump 3, my boots crunching on the gravel. The car's engine purred steadily, a sound so normal it made everything else feel more wrong. As I got closer, I raised the flashlight, preparing to tap on the window. That's when I saw the interior. The car was empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of everything. No fast food bags, no coffee cups, no phone charger, no sunglasses on the dashboard. The seats looked pristine, like the car had just rolled off a dealership lot. But more than that, they looked undisturbed. No impression in the driver's seat, no wrinkles in the fabric, nothing to suggest anyone had ever sat there. I stood there, flashlight beam playing across the empty interior, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The engine was running. The headlights were on. The car was in park. But there was nobody inside, and from the look of things, there never had been. I walked around the vehicle slowly, checking all the doors. Locked. All 4 of them. I peered through each window. Empty. The back seat was as pristine as the front. The trunk appeared closed. There was nothing unusual visible from the outside, no damage, no identifying features beyond a single bumper sticker that read, "I'd rather be fishing." My mind raced through possibilities. Someone got out while I wasn't looking, though I'd only glanced away for a few seconds at a time. They were hiding in the back seat, though I could clearly see it was empty. This was some kind of prank, though who would abandon a running car at a remote gas station in the middle of the night? I circled back to the driver's side and tried the handle again. Definitely locked. I cupped my hands around my eyes and pressed my face close to the window, blocking out the glare from the lights above. The interior was clean, almost unnaturally so. The odometer showed 37,183 miles. The fuel gauge read 3/4 full. The clock on the dashboard displayed 12:23 a.m., the correct time. Everything about this car was normal except for the fact that it was running, locked, and completely empty in the middle of nowhere. I backed away and pulled out my phone. No messages from my roommates. I typed quickly. Car is empty. Engine running, but nobody inside. All doors locked. WTF? Tyler's response came after a minute. Check the cameras. Maybe someone got out when you weren't watching. That made sense. I was probably overthinking this. Someone had pulled in, gotten out, and walked off into the desert to take a leak or make a phone call with better reception. They'd left the car running because, why not? They'd be back in a minute. Except that didn't explain why the doors were locked, or why they'd walk away from an unlocked running car at a gas station, even a remote one. I walked back to the building, the skin on the back of my neck prickling with the sensation of being watched. It was ridiculous. There was nothing out here but desert, darkness, and that empty car. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Inside, I locked the door behind me, something I rarely bothered to do. The fluorescent lights seemed brighter than before, the small store suddenly feeling like the only real place in the world, surrounded by an unreality I didn't understand. I went to the monitor and started scrubbing through the camera footage. The timestamp showed the car had arrived at 11:52 p.m., just as I'd remembered. I watched myself look up from my phone as the headlights swept across the pumps. On camera 2, which covered the pumps, I watched the car pull up to number 3 and stop. The driver's side faced the camera. I could see the window, the glare from the lights, the silhouette of what might have been a person behind the wheel, though the tint and angle made it impossible to be certain. I watched for 60 seconds. The car didn't move, nobody got out. I fast-forwarded at double speed, my eyes locked on the driver's door. At 11:55, I saw myself look up from my phone. At 11:58, I looked up again. At 12:03, I was checking the monitor. At 12:17, I saw myself grab the flashlight and head outside. In all that time, 25 minutes of footage, nobody emerged from the car. Nobody even opened a door. I rewound and watched again, this time at normal speed, my face inches from the monitor. The driver's side window, the only one clearly visible from camera 2's angle, remained closed and unchanged. If someone had gotten out, they would have had to open the door. The camera would have caught it, but they didn't. I switched to camera 1, which covered the front of the building and had a partial view of the pumps from a different angle. Maybe someone had gotten out on the passenger side, outside camera 2's view. I scrubbed through the same time period. Nothing. Nobody walked across the lot. Nobody appeared from any side of the car. I checked cameras 3 through 6, which covered the back of the building, the side access road, the perimeter fence, and the storage shed. None of them showed any person arriving on foot or leaving the vehicle. My hands were shaking as I scrubbed back to 11:52 and watched the car pull in one more time. The image quality wasn't great. These were cheap cameras Jerry had installed himself, but they were clear enough. The headlights swept across the frame. The car pulled up smoothly, precisely to pump 3. It stopped, and then nothing. I zoomed in on the driver's side window as much as the interface would allow. The image pixelated, becoming a blur of gray and black shapes. Was that a silhouette? A person sitting behind the wheel? Or just the interplay of light and shadow? My mind creating patterns where none existed. I couldn't tell. I straightened up, my lower back aching from leaning over the counter. Through the window, I could see the car still sitting at pump 3, still running, still empty. The red digits of the pump display showed $0, 0 gallons. Nobody had even attempted to fuel up. At 12:34 a.m., I called Jerry. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep and irritation. "What?" "Jerry, it's Marcus. We've got a situation." "Is the building on fire?" "No, but..." "Is someone robbing you?" "No, there's a car." "Then handle it yourself. That's what I pay you for." He hung up. I stared at my phone, then back at the car. Handle it yourself. Sure. Handle the mysteriously empty, running, locked car that had appeared out of nowhere and couldn't possibly have been driven by someone who then vanished without a trace. I pulled up the non-emergency number for the county sheriff's office. It rang 7 times before someone answered. Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. This is dispatch. "Hi, yes, I'm calling from the Stop and Go on Route 89. We've got an abandoned vehicle situation." "What's the nature of the abandonment?" "There's a car at one of our pumps. Engine running, doors locked, but nobody inside. It's been here for over 40 minutes. There was a pause. "Have you checked with the driver?" "That's the problem. There is no driver. The car is empty." Another pause, longer this time. "Sir, are you saying someone left their car running and walked away?" "I'm saying the car is running, but I never saw anyone get out. I've checked the security footage. Nobody exits the vehicle. I could hear papers shuffling on the other end." "What's your name, sir?" "Marcus Webb. I'm the attendant on duty." "Mr. Webb, I'm going to send a deputy out to take a look. It's going to be at least 30 minutes, maybe longer. Can you keep an eye on the vehicle until they arrive?" "Yeah, I can do that." "Has anyone approached the vehicle or attempted to enter it?" "Just me. I walked out there to check if someone needed help. All the doors are locked." "Please don't approach it again until the deputy arrives. If anyone does show up and attempts to access the vehicle, call 911 immediately." After hanging up, I realized how absurd my call must have sounded. An empty car with its engine running was strange, but was it really an emergency? People did weird things all the time. Maybe this was some kind of insurance scam. Maybe the owner wanted it stolen. Maybe there was a perfectly rational explanation that I was too tired and creeped out to see. But none of that explained the footage, or the lack of footage, more accurately. I made a fresh pot of coffee, my fourth of the shift, and poured a cup that I didn't really want. The familiar ritual was comforting, something normal in a night that had stopped feeling normal. At 12:47 a.m., I saw a movement on camera 4, which covered the back of the building. I switched to that feed and watched as a shape moved along the fence line at the edge of the property. It was too far away and too dark for the camera to pick up details, just a dark form that might have been a person. My heart rate kicked up. Someone was out there. Maybe the driver of the car had gotten out somehow and circled around the building. Maybe this was all about to make sense. I grabbed the flashlight and went to the back door, which opened onto a small concrete pad where we kept the dumpster and received deliveries. I flipped on the exterior light and stepped out. The motion-activated light illuminated about 30 feet of packed dirt and desert scrub. Beyond that was the fence, a simple chain-link barrier that marked the property line. Beyond the fence was darkness and open desert stretching for miles. "Hello?" I called out. "Gas station's closed for the night, but if you need help, I can..." Movement at the fence line. Something shifted in the shadows just beyond where the light reached. I raised the flashlight and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. Just creosote bushes swaying in the wind, and the fence casting geometric shadows across the ground. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "I can see you out there." Silence. Not even the sound of footsteps or rustling bushes. Just the wind and the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. I stood there for a full minute, flashlight beam sweeping back and forth across the desert. If someone had been there, they were gone now. Or they were very good at staying still and quiet. As I turned to go back inside, I heard something that froze me in place. A car door closing, not the heavy slam of someone angry or in a hurry, but the solid, precise click of a door being shut firmly. It had come from the front of the building, from the direction of the pumps. I ran. Through the back room, past the storage shelves and Jerry's cluttered office into the main store and up to the front window. The car at pump 3 hadn't moved. The engine was still running. All 4 doors appeared closed, just as they had been. But something was different. I couldn't immediately identify what had changed. The car was in the same position. The angle was the same. The headlights still pointed toward the desert. Everything looked identical to how it had looked 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago. Except it wasn't. Something was wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. I moved to the monitor and rewound the footage from camera 2. There. At 12:51 a.m., while I'd been out back, something happened. The image flickered, just for a fraction of a second. When it came back, the car was in the exact same position, but the driver's side door was open. Not wide open, just slightly ajar, maybe 3 or 4 inches. Enough to trigger the dome light, which I could now see glowing faintly through the tinted windows. I felt cold sweat break out across my back. The door had been closed. I'd checked it myself, pulled on the handle. It was locked, and the footage showed no one approaching the car while I'd been out back. The door had just opened, by itself. I watched the playback again, frame by frame. The flicker lasted exactly 1 frame. In that single frame, roughly 1/30th of a second, the door went from closed to open. There was no transition, no visible motion. It was closed, then there was visual static, then it was open. All 6 cameras showed the same single-frame distortion at exactly 12:51:17 a.m. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "You still there? Everything okay?" I typed back with trembling fingers. Door opened by itself. No one near the car. What door? The car door. Was closed and locked. Now it's open. Camera glitched at the exact moment. Camera malfunction? All 6 cameras at the exact same time. He didn't respond for almost a minute. Then, "Cops on the way?" "Yeah, 30 minutes out." Maybe stay inside until they get there. Good advice. But I couldn't stop staring at the monitor, at that door standing open just a few inches, the dome light glowing. At 1:03 a.m. it happened again. I was watching the monitor when all 6 camera feeds simultaneously flickered. One frame of static, so brief I might have missed it if I'd blinked. When the image returned, the car door was closed again. Not pulled shut, not swinging shut. Just closed, as if the past 12 minutes of it being open had never happened. I ran to the window. The door was indeed closed. No dome light. Everything back to the way it had been at 12:47 before I'd gone out back. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I pulled up the footage and scrolled to 1:03:28 a.m. There. One frame of distortion across all cameras. The door closed to open, then 12 minutes later, open to closed. This wasn't a malfunction. Malfunctions don't happen in perfect sync across multiple cameras. Malfunctions don't reverse themselves. This was something else, something that was affecting the cameras, the car, maybe reality itself in some way I couldn't begin to understand. I backed away from the monitor until my back hit the cigarette display. Through the window, the car sat innocently at pump 3, a normal sedan, the kind I'd seen thousands of times. But there was nothing normal about this. Nothing normal about any of it. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the accept button. Stop and go, this is Marcus. Silence. Not dead air, but the particular quality of silence that indicates someone is there, listening, breathing. Hello? I said. Is anyone there? More silence. Then, just barely audible, I heard it. A whisper. I couldn't make out words, just the sound of someone whispering urgently, desperately. Multiple voices overlapping, too quiet to understand but too insistent to ignore. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. I held the phone away from my ear, but I could still hear them rising in volume and intensity. They weren't speaking English. They weren't speaking any language I recognized. The sounds were wrong, the cadence inhuman. I hung up. My hand was shaking so badly the phone clattered when I set it on the counter. It rang again immediately. Same unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang 8 times before going to voicemail. A moment later, the notification showed I had a new message. I didn't want to listen to it. Every instinct screamed at me to delete it, to throw my phone away, to run out the back door and not stop running until I reached Prescott. But I needed to know. I needed some kind of understanding of what was happening. I played the voicemail on speaker. At first, there was only static. Then, underneath it, those whispers again. Clearer now, but still incomprehensible. They rose and fell in waves, sometimes seeming almost like words, other times more like wind or water or something else entirely. Then a voice cut through. Male, calm, speaking clear English. You shouldn't be there. The whispers surged louder, drowning out everything else. The message ended. I stood there staring at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. You shouldn't be there. Where? The gas station? This specific gas station? Or just here present, witnessing whatever this was? At 1:09 a.m. the car's horn honked once, a single loud blast that echoed across the empty lot. I jumped, knocking over my coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, hot liquid spreading across the tiles. Through the window, the car sat unchanged. Nobody in the driver's seat. Nobody near it. I checked the monitor. All 6 cameras showed the same thing. A car sitting at a pump, horn mysteriously honking with no human intervention. The horn honked again, then again, and again. A steady rhythm, once every 5 seconds. Like someone pressing the horn button with metronomic precision, but there was no one there. On the 16th honk, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and too fast. Could hear the hum of the refrigerators. Could hear the wind rattling a loose piece of trim on the building's exterior. But from the car, nothing. I pulled out my phone and called dispatch again. Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. Yes, hi. I called about 40 minutes ago about an abandoned vehicle at the Stop and Go on Route 89. The situation has escalated. What do you mean escalated? The car's horn started honking by itself. The doors are opening and closing. I'm getting strange phone calls. I need that deputy here now. Sir, the deputy is en route. ETA 15 minutes. Are you in immediate danger? Was I? Nothing had actually threatened me. The car was just sitting there. The phone calls were creepy but not violent. Still, every nerve in my body was screaming that I was in danger, that something profoundly wrong was happening. I don't know, I admitted. But something's really wrong here. This isn't normal. I understand, sir. Stay inside the building and keep the doors locked. Deputy Martinez will be there shortly. After hanging up, I did a quick check of all the entrances. Front door locked. Back door locked. The side door that opened onto the storage area also locked. The windows were too small for anyone to crawl through, and they were positioned high enough that someone would need a ladder. I was secure. I was safe. Nothing could get in. So why did I feel trapped? At 1:19 a.m., every light in the building went out. Not gradually, not with the flicker of a power surge, but instantly. One moment the fluorescent lights were humming overhead, and the next I was standing in complete darkness. Even the emergency exit signs died, which shouldn't have been possible since they had independent backup batteries. The only light came from outside, the sodium vapor lamps over the pumps casting an orange glow through the windows. In that light, I could see the car at pump 3. The driver's side door was open again, wide open this time, not just ajar. And sitting in the driver's seat was a shape, a silhouette, a person. I grabbed the flashlight and clicked it on. Nothing happened. Dead. I'd charged it yesterday, but now it was completely dead. The person in the car turned to look at the building. At me. I couldn't see their face in the darkness and distance, just the outline of a head rotating with mechanical slowness toward the windows. Then the car's high beams flashed on. The brilliant light flooded through the windows, blinding me. I threw my hand up to shield my eyes, stumbling backward. The beams were impossibly bright, brighter than any normal headlights, turning the interior of the store into a harsh landscape of white glare and black shadows. Through the glare, I could see the figure in the driver's seat more clearly. They were perfectly still, head still turned toward the building, toward me. But I still couldn't make out any features, just a dark shape backlit by that overwhelming light. The door chime dinged. Someone had opened the front door. My blood turned to ice. I'd locked that door. I'd checked it twice. The deadbolt was engaged. But the chime had definitely sounded, that cheerful electronic ding that signaled a customer entering. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking. "We're closed. You need to leave." No response. But I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps on the tile floor, moving deeper into the store, moving away from the entrance toward the aisles. I couldn't see anything past the glare from the headlights. The interior of the store was a maze of harsh white light and impenetrable shadows. Someone could be anywhere in that maze. "I'm armed," I lied, trying to sound threatening. "You need to identify yourself right now." The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched out, broken only by my own breathing and the hammering of my heart. Then, from somewhere in the darkness between the aisles, I heard that voice again. The same voice from the voicemail. Male, calm, but somehow wrong in a way I couldn't identify. "You shouldn't be here." "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want?" "Not who," the voice corrected. "What? And what I want is for you to understand." "Understand what?" "That you're already gone." The footsteps resumed, but now they were moving faster. Not running, but walking with purpose, the sound coming from multiple directions at once as if several people were moving through the aisles. But I'd only heard one voice. Only one door chime. The headlights switched off abruptly, plunging the store back into darkness. My eyes, adjusted to the glare, saw nothing but purple afterimages. I was blind, helpless, listening to those footsteps circling in the darkness. Something touched my arm. I jerked away, swinging my fist at empty air. My knuckles cracked against a shelf, sending cans rattling to the floor. I stumbled backward, colliding with the counter, spinning to orient myself. "Stay away from me," I shouted into the darkness. Laughter. Multiple voices, laughing in perfect unison. The sound echoed strangely in the confined space, seeming to come from everywhere at once. Then, just as suddenly as they'd gone out, the lights came back on. I blinked against the sudden brightness, my vision slowly adjusting. The store was empty. No one stood between the aisles. No one lurked in the shadows. The front door was closed, the deadbolt still engaged. I ran to the door and checked it. Locked. Definitely locked. I hadn't imagined that. Outside, the car sat at pump 3. The driver's door was closed. No figure in the driver's seat. Everything looked exactly as it had before the lights went out. I checked the monitor, my hands trembling as I rewound the footage. The timestamp showed 1:19 a.m. when all 6 cameras went to black. They came back online at 1:23 a.m. 4 minutes of darkness with no recording. But in the final frame before the blackout, I could see myself behind the counter. And I could see something else. A shadow on the floor near the front door. A shadow cast by nothing, just a dark shape on the tiles where no object stood to create it. The shadow was shaped like a person, and it was moving. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Basement. We didn't have a basement. The building sat on a concrete slab. There was no lower level, no crawl space, nothing beneath the floor but dirt and rock. Another text. Check the basement. I typed back, "There is no basement." The reply came instantly. "There is now." I looked at the floor behind the counter. The same worn tiles I'd mopped 1,000 times. Nothing unusual. Nothing different. But as I stared, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Or rather, something I'd seen every day but never really noticed. In the corner, mostly hidden behind the cigarette display, and a stack of newspaper bundles waiting to be recycled, there was a seam in the floor. 2 tiles that didn't quite meet properly, leaving a gap of maybe 1/4 inch. I'd never questioned it before. Old buildings have imperfections. Tiles shift and settle over time. But now, looking at it with the fear and paranoia of the past hour heightening my perception, I could see that the seam was too straight, too deliberate. It formed a perfect square, about 3 feet on each side. I moved the newspaper bundles aside. The gap went all the way around, forming a trapdoor. A trapdoor I'd somehow never noticed despite standing in this exact spot for 8 hours a night, 5 nights a week, for 8 months. There was a recessed handle, just a small metal loop flush with the tile. I hooked my finger through it and pulled. The trapdoor lifted easily, perfectly balanced on hidden hinges. Beneath it was darkness and a set of concrete steps leading down. A smell wafted up, damp and cold and old. The smell of earth that hadn't felt sunlight in a very long time. At the bottom of the steps, about 12 feet down, I could see a faint light. Not electric, but the flickering orange glow of fire. My phone buzzed again. "Come down, we've been waiting." Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to close the trapdoor, to run out the back door, to wait for Deputy Martinez in the parking lot. But rationality had left the building somewhere around the time the empty car started honking its own horn. I needed to understand. I needed to know what this was, what was happening to me, why tonight was different from every other night I'd worked here. Some part of me sensed that this was important, that the answer to everything was down those stairs. I descended slowly, each step taking enormous effort. The concrete walls were rough and unmarked, with no signs of finishing work or paint. These stairs hadn't been built recently. They were old, much older than the gas station above. As I went deeper, the temperature dropped. By the time I reached the bottom, my breath was misting in the air despite it being March in Arizona, where nighttime lows rarely dropped below 40. The stairs opened into a room. Not large, maybe 15 feet square, with a low ceiling that forced me to duck slightly. The walls were stone, ancient-looking, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. They weren't hieroglyphs or any writing system I'd studied. They looked older, more primal, carved deep into the rock with crude tools. In the center of the room stood a table made from the same stone as the walls. On the table was a candle, the source of the flickering light, and next to it, a book. Old leather, cracked with age, bound with what looked like sinew. And standing on the far side of the table was a man. He looked normal. Completely, unremarkably normal. Middle-aged, maybe 50, with graying hair and glasses. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, the kind of outfit you'd see on anyone in rural Arizona. He smiled when he saw me, a friendly, grandfatherly smile. "Marcus?" he said warmly. "Thank you for coming down. I know tonight has been frightening." "Who are you?" My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "That's complicated. I'm a lot of people, actually. Or rather, I was. Names don't mean much anymore." He gestured to the room around us. "This place is much older than the building above. It was here first, waiting. When they built the gas station in 1983, they covered it up, tried to pretend it didn't exist, but you can't erase some things just by building over them. The car outside is mine, was mine, will be mine. Time gets confusing here." He tapped the book on the table. "It's all in here. The record of everyone who worked at that counter. Everyone who stood where you stood night after night watching the darkness." "I don't understand." "You're the 17th, Marcus. 17 people have worked the night shift at this gas station since it opened. None of them lasted more than a year. They all found the stairs eventually. They all came down." His smile faded, and none of them left. I took a step backward toward the stairs. "I'm leaving. Right now." "You can't. You haven't finished your shift yet." He checked his watch, though there was no way he could see it clearly in the dim candlelight. "Another 4 hours until someone comes to relieve you. 4 hours until 6 a.m. That's when it happens. That's when you have to choose." "Choose what?" I demanded, but I was already backing toward the stairs. "To stay or to become? To remain Marcus Webb, night shift attendant, or to become something else? Something that exists between the moments, in the spaces where time folds over itself." He opened the book, running his finger down a page. "Look, here's David Chen. He worked here in 1991, chose to stay. He's still upstairs, actually, still working his shift. You just can't see him because he's working a shift that already happened." My back hit the stairs. "You're insane. None of this is real." "The deputy is almost here," the man continued, ignoring my protest. "Deputy Martinez. She'll arrive at 1:34 a.m. She'll walk around the car, check the plates, find that it's not in any database. She'll come inside, ask you some questions, and you'll tell her everything was fine. Because that's what everyone tells her. That's what happens every time. Every time. What are you talking about?" He turned the book toward me. In the candlelight, I could see pages filled with handwriting. Different styles, different pens, spanning decades. Each entry was dated and signed. I saw names I didn't recognize, dates going back to 1983. The entries were short, just a few lines each. David Chen, October 15th, 1991. Chose to stay. Still sees the car every Tuesday. Patricia Morrison, July 3rd, 1995. Chose to become. No longer bound. Kevin Yang, January 22nd, 2003. Chose to stay. Regrets it. The list went on. 16 names, 16 night shift workers. And at the bottom of the page, in handwriting I recognized as my own, though I'd never written it, was a 17th entry. Marcus Webb, March 19th, 2024. Chose to... The rest was blank. "I never wrote that," I said, my voice shaking. "Not yet. But you will. In about 3 hours, you'll come back down here and write it. You'll make your choice and record it just like everyone else." He closed the book gently. "The question is, what will you choose?" "I choose to leave. Right now. I'm walking up those stairs and I'm never coming back." "You can try. But you'll find that 6 a.m. comes around regardless of what you do. And when it does, you'll be here. You've always been here, Marcus. Since the first time you walked through that door 8 months ago, you've been trapped in this moment. Tonight just happens to be the night you become aware of it." I ran. up the stairs, taking them two at a time, my lungs burning with effort. Behind me, I heard the man's voice, calm and patient. "I'll see you at 6 a.m., Marcus. We all will." I burst through the trapdoor into the store. The lights were still on. The clock above the counter read 1:32 a.m. I slammed the trapdoor shut and shoved the newspaper bundles back over it. Through the window, I saw headlights approaching. A police cruiser pulled into the lot, coming to a stop near the mysterious car at Pump 3. Deputy Martinez got out. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She approached the car cautiously, one hand resting on her service weapon. I watched through the window as she walked around the vehicle, checking the doors, peering through the windows. She pulled out a radio and spoke into it, probably running the plates. After a minute, she shook her head and headed toward the building. I unlocked the front door before she reached it. "Evening," she said, her voice professional but not unfriendly. "You're the one who called about the abandoned vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am. It's been here for almost 2 hours now." She pulled out a notepad. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. The car arriving at 11:52, nobody getting out, the doors being locked, the horn honking by itself. I didn't mention the basement or the man or the book with my name in it. Some part of me knew she wouldn't believe those parts. Deputy Martinez listened patiently, taking notes. When I finished, she said, "The plates don't match any vehicle in our database, which is unusual but not impossible. Could be a stolen plate, could be a bureaucratic error. What about the driver? No sign of anyone. You're sure you didn't see anyone exit the vehicle?" "Positive. I've been watching it the whole time." "Late." She glanced back at the car, then at me. "Any security footage?" I hesitated. If I showed her the footage, she'd see the doors opening and closing by themselves. She'd see the single-frame glitches. She'd think the cameras were malfunctioning, or that I'd tampered with them. "The system had some issues tonight," I said. "Technical problems. The footage is corrupted." It was a lie, but she accepted it with a nod. "We'll have the vehicle towed. Owner can claim it from the impound lot if they show up." She handed me a business card. "Call me if anything else unusual happens." As she turned to leave, I called out, "Deputy Martinez?" She paused. "Yes?" "Have you responded to calls at this gas station before, for abandoned vehicles?" Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Recognition, maybe. Or memory. Once or twice. Why? What happened those times?" "Same as tonight. Vehicle gets towed. Owner never claims it." She studied me for a long moment. "You planning on staying with this job, Mr. Webb?" The question felt loaded with meaning I didn't fully understand. "I don't know. Why?" "Just curious. Night shift at a place like this, it's a tough gig. Most people don't last long." She tipped her hat. "Have a safe rest of your shift." I watched her return to her cruiser and call for a tow truck. She didn't leave, just sat in her car filling out paperwork. The presence of another human being, even one sitting in a vehicle 50 feet away, was enormously comforting. At 2:15 a.m., the tow truck arrived. 2 guys in greasy coveralls hooked up the mysterious car and hauled it away. Deputy Martinez followed them out of the lot, leaving me alone again. The clock above the counter ticked toward 2:30, 3.5 hours until 6 a.m., 3.5 hours until whatever was supposed to happen. I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. "Dude, it's almost 2:30 in the morning," he answered groggily. "I need you to come pick me up right now. I'm leaving this job." "What?" "Marcus, you can't just... I'm serious. Something's wrong with this place. I can't explain it, but I need to leave, now." There was a long pause. Okay, give me 20 minutes to get dressed and... The call dropped. I looked at my phone. No signal. Full bars, but no signal. I tried calling back. Nothing. I tried the landline behind the counter. Dead. No dial tone. The power was still on. The lights worked. The refrigerators hummed. But every form of communication had been severed. At 2:47 a.m., I heard the door chime. I spun around. The front door was still locked, deadbolt engaged. but someone was walking through the aisles. I could hear footsteps, the rustle of clothing, the small sounds of a person moving through the store. "We're closed," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The footsteps stopped. Then a man stepped into view from behind the chip display. He looked familiar, though I couldn't immediately place him. Asian, maybe 40, wearing a stop-and-go uniform polo shirt identical to mine. "You're Marcus, right?" he asked. "I'm David Chen." The name from the book, the first entry, 1991. "You're not real," I said, my back pressed against the counter. "I'm as real as you are. More real, maybe, since I've been here longer." He moved closer, his footsteps making no sound on the tile floor. "I worked your shift for 3 years before I chose to stay. Best decision I ever made, honestly. The alternative was worse." "What alternative?" "Becoming. Letting go of who you were and turning into something else. Something that exists outside of normal time. The other choice is staying, remaining yourself, but trapped in your shift forever. It's not so bad. You get used to it. I'm not choosing either of those things. I'm leaving." David smiled sadly. "That's what I said too. But you can't leave, Marcus. None of us can. This place, this moment, it's a trap. And once you're aware of it, once you see the pattern, you're stuck." Another figure emerged from the aisles. A woman, maybe 50, also wearing a stop-and-go uniform. Then another person, and another. They came from impossible directions, stepping out of shadows that were too shallow to hide them, emerging from behind displays too small to conceal a person. 16 people. 16 night shift workers from across 3 decades. All of them trapped. All of them reliving their final shift over and over. "It's almost 3 a.m., one of them said. A young guy. Couldn't be more than 20. That's when the real fear starts. When you realize that 6 a.m. is coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I wanted to run, but where would I go? Out into the desert? I'd seen what was out there. The thing pretending to be a man in the basement. The car that existed in multiple states at once. This building was the only solid thing in a reality that had become fluid and wrong. The crowd of former workers parted, and through the gap, I saw someone else. Someone I recognized immediately, though we'd never met. It was me. Another Marcus Webb, wearing the same clothes with the same expression of barely controlled terror. He looked at me, and I looked at him. And we both understood in that moment that we were the same person experiencing the same moment from different points in the same loop. "What time is it for you?" I asked him. 5:47 a.m., he replied, his voice hollow. 13 minutes until the choice. He walked past me, heading toward the corner where the trapdoor lay hidden. I watched him move the newspaper bundles aside, lift the door, and descend into the darkness below. The other workers followed him one by one, filing down the stairs like mourners at a funeral. David Chen went last, pausing to look back at me. "See you in a few hours, Marcus. Or a few minutes. Time doesn't mean much here anymore." Then they were gone, and I was alone again. The clock read 3:03 a.m. 2 hours and 57 minutes until 6 a.m. I spent those hours trying everything I could think of to escape. I tried to break the windows, but they wouldn't crack no matter how hard I hit them. I tried to force open the doors, but they were sealed as if welded shut. I tried to break through the walls, but my fists just bounced off drywall that suddenly felt as hard as concrete. Nothing worked. The building had become a prison, and I was its only inmate. At 4:30 a.m., I stopped fighting and sat down behind the counter. My hands were bruised and bleeding from my attempts to break free. My mind felt like it was fracturing, reality and impossibility blending together until I couldn't distinguish between them. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. I needed to record this, to leave some evidence of what was happening. But when I started recording, the image on the screen showed something different from what my eyes saw. On the phone, the store was empty and dark. The lights were off. The shelves were bare, and standing behind the counter right where I was sitting was a skeleton in a stop-and-go uniform. The name tag read Marcus Webb. I dropped the phone, and it clattered across the floor. At 5 a.m. I understood. I'd been dead the whole time. Or I'd never been alive. Or I was living and dying simultaneously, existing in some quantum state where both were true. The gas station was a way station, a place between life and death, or between one moment and the next, and we, the night shift workers, were the attendants of this impossible space. The car that arrived at 11:52 was my car. I'd driven it here 8 months ago on my first day of work. I'd pulled up to pump 3, and I'd never left. Everything since then had been a loop. The same shift played over and over with small variations each time. Tonight was different only because tonight I became aware of it. Tonight the pattern revealed itself. At 5:30 a.m. I walked to the trap door and opened it. The 16 workers stood at the bottom of the stairs waiting. The man in flannel held the book open to my page. "It's time, Marcus," he said gently. I descended the stairs one last time. At the bottom, I took the pen he offered me and looked at my entry. Marcus Webb, March 19th, 2024. Chose to... "You have to choose," David Chen said from somewhere in the darkness. "Stay and remain yourself, trapped in this shift forever, or become and let go of who you were, transform into something that can move freely through the spaces between moments. What happens if I become?" The man in flannel smiled. "You become like me. You become the pattern itself. You exist in all shifts simultaneously, in all moments at once. You lose your name, your identity, but you gain freedom of a sort. And if I stay? You work the night shift forever. Every night is tonight. Every shift is this shift. But you remain Marcus Webb. You remain yourself." I looked at the 16 others gathered in the stone room. Some of them looked content. Others looked hollow, emptied out by decades of the same 8 hours repeated endlessly. All of them were waiting for my decision. I thought about my mom, sick at home depending on the money I sent her each month. I thought about Tyler and my other roommates, about the life I'd put on hold to come back to Prescott. I thought about all the things I'd planned to do someday, when I had time, when I had money, when I'd gotten my life together. All of it felt distant now, like memories from someone else's life. I put pen to paper and wrote, "Chose to stay." The moment I finished writing, the room lurched. Reality bent, folded, and snapped back into place. I was standing behind the counter again. The clock read 5:59 a.m. Through the window, I saw headlights approaching, a familiar car pulling into the lot. It stopped at pump 3, and I watched as the driver's door opened and someone got out. It was me, a different me, from 8 months ago, arriving for his first shift. He looked nervous and uncertain as he walked toward the building. I watched my past self enter through the door, walk behind the counter and begin his shift. He didn't see me. I was a ghost to him, or he was a ghost to me. We existed in the same space but different times, the same moment looping over and over. The clock struck 6 a.m. Jerry arrived to start the morning shift just like always. He walked right past me without acknowledging my presence. The daytime version of the store flickered into existence around me, overlapping with the nighttime version. I could see both simultaneously, two realities occupying the same space. My shift was over. But it was also just beginning. And it would begin again tomorrow night, and the night after, and every night forever. I understood now why the others had looked so hollow. This was eternity, an endless repetition of the same 8 hours. No progression, no change, no escape. Just the fluorescent lights, the coffee maker, the occasional customer, and the long stretches of darkness between. David Chen appeared beside me, visible now that I'd made my choice. "You get used to it," he said quietly. "After a few thousand repetitions, you stop counting the hours. After a few million, you stop remembering what it was like before. How long have you been here?" "I don't know anymore. Years, decades. Time is different for us now. We're always in the night shift, but the night shift is always different and always the same." I looked at the clock. 6:03 a.m. In about 18 hours, my shift would start again, and again, and again. The car appeared at pump 3. It was there and then it wasn't, flickering in and out of existence. I understood now that it was a marker, a sign that the loop was resetting. Every night it arrived at 11:52, and every night I discovered it was empty, and every night I went through the same sequence of confusion, fear, and eventual understanding. "Does it ever end?" I asked David. "No, that's the point. That's why it's a choice. Stay and be yourself forever, or become and lose yourself completely. Neither option is good, but they're the only options." I watched my past self work the counter, completely unaware that his future self was standing right next to him, watching, trapped in a moment that would never end. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a phone ringing. My phone, in my pocket, but also not in my pocket. The call was coming from outside the loop, from the real world that continued without me. I pulled out my phone, Tyler's name on the screen. I answered. "Marcus? Dude, you never came home last night. Are you still at work?" I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't work. The words formed in my mind but couldn't make it past my lips. I was inside the loop now, and the loop had rules. Communication with the outside world wasn't allowed. "Marcus, hello? If this is a butt dial, I swear..." The call dropped. The phone went dark. I put it back in my pocket, a useless artifact from a life I used to have. The sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful, like it was every morning. Like it would be every morning forever. Jerry finished counting the register and looked around the store, making sure everything was in order for the day shift. He didn't see me. He'd never seen any of us. We were the night people, invisible to the day. At 10 p.m., the evening shift ended and the night shift began. I blinked, and 14 hours had passed in an instant. That's how it worked now. The hours between shifts didn't exist for me. I simply jumped from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. over and over. I took my place behind the counter. The store was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The coffee maker began brewing its first pot of the night. Everything was exactly as it had been. At 11:52 p.m., a car pulled into the lot. Dark-colored sedan, generic make and model. It stopped at pump 3. Nobody got out. I watched it, already knowing what would happen next. The entire night stretched before me, every moment predetermined, every action scripted. I would wait. I would investigate. I would discover the car was empty. I would call the sheriff. I would find the basement. I would make the choice I'd already made. And tomorrow night I would do it all again. David Chen materialized beside me, watching the car with the weary expression of someone who'd seen this scene countless times. "Welcome to forever, Marcus," he said. "Try not to think about it too much. That's how you stay sane. Just do the shift, just work the counter. Don't think about the fact that you're doing it forever." I nodded, understanding completely. The car's horn honked once, right on schedule. I picked up my phone to call dispatch, knowing what I would say, knowing what they would say, knowing how the entire night would unfold. I was an actor performing a play I'd memorized, speaking lines that had been written before I was born. But something was different this time. When I looked at the security monitor, I saw something new. A 17th figure in the basement. Someone who hadn't been there before. Someone I didn't recognize. "Who is that?" I asked David. He leaned closer to the monitor, squinting. "That's impossible. We're all here. All 16 of us. There shouldn't be." The figure on the monitor looked up at the camera. Even through the grainy black and white image, I could see his face clearly. It was Jerry, my boss. The owner of the gas station. "How long has he been down there?" I whispered. David's face had gone pale. "He's not supposed to be one of us. He's supposed to be on the outside. He's supposed to be free." But even as he said it, I understood the truth. Jerry had never been free. He'd opened this gas station in 1983, and he'd been trapped here just as long as any of us. Longer, probably. He was the first one, the anchor that held all the others in place. The pattern went deeper than I'd realized. The loop was bigger than just the night shift workers. It included everyone who spent time in this building, everyone who worked here, everyone who stopped for gas in the middle of the night. We were all trapped. Some of us knew it, most didn't. But we were all performing the same actions day after day, night after night, forever. I looked out at the car sitting at pump 3. Then I looked at my own reflection in the window behind the counter. I looked tired. I looked scared. I looked like someone who just realized the magnitude of his mistake. "Does it get easier?" I asked David. "No," he said honestly. "It gets different, but not easier." The clock read 11:58 p.m. 2 more minutes until midnight. 2 more minutes until the next phase of the loop began. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for eternity. Through the window, I could see the desert stretching away into darkness. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of the sodium vapor lights, the real world continued. People lived their lives, made their choices, moved forward through time like they were supposed to. But not me. Not anymore. I was Marcus Webb, night shift attendant at the Stop and Go on Route 89, and I would be Marcus Webb, night shift attendant, forever. The car's horn honked again. I picked up the phone to call dispatch. Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, this is dispatch. Hi, yes, I'm calling from the Stop and Go on Route 89. We've got an abandoned vehicle situation. The words came automatically, a script I'd performed before and would perform again. Forever and ever, the same words, the same moment, the same fear and confusion and eventual understanding. This was my eternity. This was my choice. And somewhere in the basement, in that stone room with the book and the candle, a new entry was already being written. Someone else would work here eventually. Someone else would find the trapdoor. Someone else would make the choice. The loop would continue. It always had. It always would. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another terrifying tale. And tell me in the comments, what would you have chosen? Would you stay and remain yourself trapped forever? Or would you become something else entirely? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for listening, and remember, the next time you stop at a gas station late at night and see a tired attendant behind the counter, look closely. They might not be as alive as you think. Sleep well.